This video is going to go over simplifying with algebra tiles. Alright, so we've been working with algebra tiles, and mostly we've been working with these three tiles. We have the x tile, the x squared tile, and we know this is the 1 tile. Alright, all of the ones that we've been doing so far have all been positive. We've said that they're all positive. So like this was a positive one. This was whatever x is, it was a positive. This was a positive x squared. Today we're going to start working with the opposite of positive, which is negative. So in your math book, and whenever you draw this on paper, if you want it to represent a positive, whatever you're working with, you're going to be shading it in. Okay, so like you see up here, this is shaded in. If it's negative, it's going to be just blank, so unshaded. All right, and then just as a quick reminder, when we have this longer tile, this long skinny one, we call that the x tile. We don't know how long x is. It could be any length. That's why we called it x. So just as a quick refresher, it could be anything. It could be 5, it could be 7, it could be -3. So that could be any length. All right, so when we're working with positive and negative tiles, I just want to point out that if it's shaded, it's whatever x is. So let's say I tell you that x in this case is 4. And I draw an x tile, okay? I shade it in, okay? So I know that this actually equals 4, okay? It's just a normal x. Now, if I drew a plain tile like this, and I still told you x was 4, this means it represents the opposite of whatever x is. So this tile, when it's not shaded in, represents the opposite. So in this case, the opposite of 4 is actually a -4. All right, so now let's think about it a different way. What if I drew in my tile, okay, and I shaded it in, and I told you this time that x is a -3. Okay, so this x tile, it stands for whatever it actually is, okay? It's the positive of that. So I could write it's a positive -3, which is actually, this stands for -3. Now, if I drew just a normal tile that wasn't shaded, that stands for, it's the opposite of whatever you said x was. So if I said x was -3, okay, I need to do the opposite of that, which would, so that would become, so if it's the opposite of -3, that would make that a +3. One way to write that is you can use this negative sign to mean opposite. So the opposite of -3, which is a +3. So let's look at one more example of that. So, okay, let's say I tell you that this time x is -5, and then I give you these two x tiles. So this tile, if it's shaded in, it's the positive, so it represents what it really is. So if I say x is -5, that really does equal -5. Now if I come to this tile, this means the opposite or the negative of it. So if I said x is -5, I have to do the opposite, so I can use the negative symbol to mean opposite of -5, which is actually +5. So this can be kind of tricky, but just think the white tile just means the opposite of whatever I tell you it is. Another way to write this tile, so this one we just call the x tile, right? This top one. This can be called the negative x tile. So that's a way to write it as well. All right, so I want you to kind of think about what is true when you put opposites together. So look at these three statements. What do you think is true about opposites? So look at this first one. Think if you have +6 and a -6. If you put that together, 6 plus -6, that makes 0. So what do you think is true about x and -x? Well, they're opposites. When you add opposites, you get 0. So what about x squared and then -x squared? Well, again, those are opposites. Whenever you add opposites, you get 0. You might want to even put that in your notes. When you add opposites, you get 0. So that leads us to something called zero pairs when we're working with algebra tiles. If possible, when you're trying to simplify a group of algebra tiles, you want to try to make 0 pairs. So for instance, I have a 1 tile, and then this represents a -1 tile. If I have those in the same group here together, think about if I have 1 plus -1. If I put those together, they're going to kind of cancel each other out and make 0. So if I'm trying to simplify a set of algebra tiles, basically I can just kind of cross them off. They equal 0. So over here, I have a positive x and a -x. And again, if you want to think of this as a -x, just think I would always kind of write that there. So if you have a positive x and a -x, together, they're going to cancel out or make 0. That's called a 0 pair. So sometimes your book will show like, oh, those kind of go away. Those cancel each other out and make 0. All right, so we have an expression mat here. This is called an expression mat. Basically, it's just a place where you can build with your algebra tiles. So we're going to try to build what it says here. It says, can you put 2? So I'm going to put 2 tiles, okay, 2 1 tiles. I'm going to shade them in because it says positive 2. Okay, took care of that. Then it says plus 2 x's, okay, same thing. I'm going to draw 2 x tiles. I know those are x's. I made them long and skinny. And those are also positive, so I shade it in. Then it says plus another x, so I'll draw another x tile. Then it says plus negative 3, so now I'm going to draw 3 negative tiles. Now remember, these are negative tiles, okay? And then it says plus negative 3 x's, so I'm going to draw my x tiles, but not shade them in. Those are negative x's. Now if you want, you could label it right on here. That's a negative x, a negative x, a negative x, positive x, 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 x. There's a 1, 1, negative 1, negative 1. You don't really have to do that. So now, here's what we're going to try to do. We want to simplify that expression. All right, so we want to simplify it using our algebra tiles. So basically, I want to know, could you make some 0 pairs? So here's how that works. Think about if I took this positive one and that negative one. A positive one and a negative one together make 0. So I'm just going to kind of cancel those out. Here's another positive one and a negative one. Those are going to make a 0 pair. Cancel out. Remember, because a positive one plus a negative one is 0. Are there anything, or is there anything else I can cancel out? How about a positive x and a negative x? Those will make a 0 pair. Another positive x and a negative x, those make a 0 pair. And a positive x and a negative x, those make a 0 pair. So all I'm left with at the end, I have one thing left, and it's a negative 1. So this expression right here actually is the same as writing negative 1. Simplifies all the way down to negative 1. Let's try another one to build. So it says negative 2. I'm going to draw 2 negative tiles. Remember, you don't shade them in. Plus 2 x's. So 2 x tiles. I just like to make those a little bit longer. And they're positive, so you better shade them in. Somehow you just kind of shade them in so you know. And then it says plus 1. So I'll draw a 1 tile. It's positive, so shade it in. And then it says minus x. That means like a negative x tile. So I'll draw a negative x tile. Plus, down here, negative 5. So those are not shaded. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 ones. And then plus 2 x's. So that's my x tiles shaded in. Okay, when you're drawing these, you really need to be careful so you make sure your 1s are small and your x's are bigger. So now we want to see if we can simplify that. Is there any 0 pairs we can make? Well, I see one right here. A positive 1 and a negative 1. My positive and my negative, they make 0. Cancel out. How about this positive x and the negative x? Those are going to cancel each other out. So let's see what I'm left with. I like to start with my x's. I have 1, 2, 3 x. And those are positive. And then I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 negatives. So I'm going to write plus negative 6. So that is my simplified expression. Now, this one up here and this one down here, these two expressions, they're actually the same. You just kind of simplified. You did some canceling out, so you simplified it. So what we just wrote before, those are called equivalent expressions. So they're 2 expressions that equal actually the same amount. We just gave them different names. So what we wrote were equivalent expressions. So let's go ahead and look at this set of algebra tiles. I want to see if we can actually write what it equals over here to start with. Okay, so I see 2 x's, so I'm going to write 2x plus, I see 2 negative x's, so I'm going to write plus negative 2x, plus, I see 1, 2, 3, 4 positive ones, and then I'll write plus, I see 3 negative ones. All right, so first thing there, I just kind of wrote my expression. All right, the next thing that I want to do is see if I can actually simplify this. So let's try to make some 0 pairs. So I know I'll take a positive x and a negative x, that makes 0. A positive x, a negative x, that makes 0. Those are all gone. They made 0. And then a positive 1 and a negative 1, that makes 0. A positive 1 and a negative 1, and a positive 1 and a negative 1. They make 0 too, so all I'm left with is 1 positive tile. So this really simplifies down to 1. Okay, and this expression up here and this expression, they actually are the same thing. Now I want you to kind of look at it. Think about if I had 2x and negative 2x, aren't those really going to cancel? And then 4 plus negative 3, does that give me 1? Yeah, we know how to simplify that already. Now I'm just showing it to you with algebra tiles. All right, let's see if we can simplify this one. So first thing, let's see if we can write down what it actually is. So I see 2x squareds, if you guys see those, plus I see 2x's, plus, I see 1, 2 negative x's, and then plus, I see 2, and then plus, I see 3 negatives. Okay, so now I'm going to try to simplify that. So let's see if we can make some zero pairs. I see a positive x and a negative x, that's 0. A positive x and a negative x, that's 0. Positive 1 and a negative 1, that's 0. Positive and a negative 1, that makes 0. Okay, so let's see what I'm left with. I have 2x squareds plus, I see a negative 1. That is my simplified expression. So up here and down here, those are both equal to each other. It's just a different way to write them. And this way is a little bit shorter. That's why it's kind of simplified. All right, I want you to give this one a try. You don't have to write everything down. I just want you to make zero pairs and simplify it. And then when you're all the way done, write down what you have left. Okay, so simplify it. And then there's also one other one for you to try on your sheet. And then bring those to class and we will check them tomorrow.